That afternoon, I erased the words, "unreliable narrator," from the whiteboard as my last literature student filed out of the lecture hall. I called after them not to forget that the person telling the story isn't always the person telling the truth. A few students laughed, and for one quiet minute, standing in the chalk, dusted air of that familiar room, I felt entirely like myself. Then my phone buzzed against the lectern, and everything shifted. I glanced down at the screen. The message was from Miriam. "Come to our reunion," it read. "All our friends will be there, and even your ex Mark, now my fiancé. We're really looking forward to seeing you. So, Miriam." Just like that, I was 17 again, smaller, quieter, and bracing for something I didn't know how to name. I sat down hard in one of the front row chairs and read the message 3 times. The words didn't change. Miriam had made my life unbearable all through high school. She mocked my thrift store sweaters, my library books, my careful answers in class. She called me Miss Perfect. Until people stopped using my actual name, until even I half forgot it. The nickname carried just enough venom to sting without being anything anyone could technically punish her for. That was always her gift, precision cruelty dressed up as teasing. Years later, she had found Mark, my husband, and she'd handed him a new version of me. Cold, she told him. Judgmental, hard to love. The kind of woman who made a man feel small just by being in the room. She fed him that story in pieces. The way you ruin something slowly so the person holding it doesn't notice the rot until it's too late. Mark believed her. By the time I understood what was happening, my marriage already had Miriam's voice woven through it, like a thread I couldn't pull out without unraveling everything. The worst part was how ordinary it looked while it was happening. Miriam did not arrive at our house wearing a villain's smile. She reappeared through a class alumni group, sent Mark a friendly message about an old photograph, and slowly made herself useful. She remembered birthdays. She laughed at his stories. When he complained about work, she told him he deserved more appreciation. When I asked why she was calling after midnight, he said I was being suspicious. Miriam had already taught him the answer before I asked the question. Then my own memories became evidence against me. If I was tired after teaching, I was cold. If I disagreed with him, I was judgmental. If I asked to see the messages, I was controlling. Mark began repeating phrases that did not sound like him until they did. The night he left, he said living with me felt like being graded. I remember staring at the red pen in my hand. I had actually been marking essays, and wondering how a woman I had not invited into my marriage had managed to describe my kitchen so convincingly. 6 months later, Mark and Miriam appeared together at an alumni fundraiser. She touched his arm while speaking to me and wore sympathy like perfume. She said she hoped I was finding peace. Mark looked away. That was when I understood that betrayal is not always one dramatic act. Sometimes it is a committee decision made in whispers, followed by a public announcement after everyone, but you already knows the result. For 2 weeks, I stared at that reunion message every night. I'd pick up my phone, read it again, and set it face down on my nightstand. My friend Claire found me in my office one afternoon, staring at the screen with a particular expression. She later described as someone trying to defuse a bomb without a manual. She read the message over my shoulder and said flatly, "Delete it." "You're not going." "If I don't," I told her, "she'll tell everyone I was too scared to show my face." The Claire was quiet for a moment. "So let her talk." "That's the problem," I said. "I always did." Something in her expression softened. She pulled up a chair. "Then don't go alone," she said. That night, I opened my laptop and did the only thing that made sense to my tired, wounded brain. I hired an actor to be my +1. Not a boyfriend. Not an escort. An actor. Through a legitimate talent agency. Contracted for a single social event. I wrote out the booking notes with the precision of someone grading an essay. I didn't need romance. I didn't need theater. I needed one person beside me who hadn't already been handed Miriam's version of me and decided it was accurate. His name was Norton, and we met 2 days before the reunion in a coffee shop near campus. He arrived in a gray blazer, carrying himself with the easy confidence of someone entirely comfortable being looked at. He was handsome enough that the moment I saw him through the window, I briefly considered slipping out the back. He spotted me before I could move. "You're Daphne?" he asked, sliding into the seat across from me. "Unfortunately," I said. His mouth twitched. "That bad? I'm hiring a stranger to help me survive a high school reunion," I said. "What do you think?" "Fair enough." He set down his coffee. "Your booking notes were clear. No fake romance, no kissing, no jealousy performance." "I'm an English lecturer," I said. "I have a genuine aversion to cheap fiction." He laughed at that. A real laugh, not a polished one, and I felt my shoulders drop about 2 inches. We talked through the situation honestly. I told him about Miriam, about the years of quiet erosion she'd carried out in high school, and then about what she'd done to my marriage. I watched his face as I spoke. It wasn't pity. It was something closer to attention, the way someone listens, when they're actually tracking what you're saying, rather than waiting for their turn to speak. "So what exactly is my role?" he asked. "A steady witness," I said. "I don't want to pretend we're together. I don't want to lie more than we have to. I just want one night where I don't feel like I'm apologizing for existing." Norton was quiet for a moment, then looked back. "When she looks at you like she's already won." My eyes burned unexpectedly. "You make that sound easy." "I didn't say easy," he said. "I said possible." He signed the contract. On Friday night, I changed dresses 3 times before settling on the navy one with the clean, quiet silhouette that made me feel seen without announcing itself. When Norton knocked at 7 o'clock, I opened the door before I could lose my nerve. He looked at me and nodded once, the way someone does when they approve without making a production of it. In the car, he glanced at my hands, which were pressed flat against my knees. "Want to rehearse anything?" he asked. "No," I said. "If I rehearse, I'll sound rehearsed. I was always terrible at drama." He didn't push. The high school looked smaller than I remembered and larger than I wanted. Music spilled from the gymnasium, and the reunion banner hung over the double doors, with that particular shade of institutional optimism that only school events manage to achieve. I tightened my hand around my purse and stopped on the walkway. "I can't do this?" I said. Norton turned to face me. "You can, but you don't have to pretend it's easy." I looked at the bright gymnasium doors. "She wants me to walk in small." "Then don't." So I got out. Norton offered his arm, and I took it, and we walked through those doors together. The second we stepped inside, people turned. A few whispered. My 17-year-old self reached for the nearest exit. Then Miriam appeared. She moved through the crowd the way she always had, like she owned the air in whatever room she entered, trailing the assumption that everyone was watching, and that this was simply her due. Mark followed half a step behind her. Older than I remembered, less certain than I expected, wearing the expression of someone who had learned to read the weather by watching someone else's face. "Daphne," Miriam said, spreading her arms wide. "You actually came." I did. Her eyes moved to Norton with the unhurried precision of someone taking inventory. "Well, you brought someone." "This is Norton." Norton held out his hand with easy courtesy. Miriam ignored it and looked him up and down. "Someone's doing charity work," she said. My face warmed. Norton tilted his head very slightly. "Jealousy is a sin, ma'am." A few people nearby laughed. Miriam's smile twitched at its edges but held. Mark cleared his throat. "You look well, Daphne," he said. "Thank you, Mark." He glanced briefly at Miriam, then back at me. "I'm glad you came." I wanted to ask if he had ever, in any of the years between the end of our marriage and this moment, wondered whether Miriam had lied. I wanted to ask what exactly he had believed, and when, and whether any part of him had ever gone back and questioned it. Instead, I said, "It's good to see familiar faces," and meant it about everyone else in the room. Miriam laughed softly. "Oh, Daphne, still so careful." There it was. The little needle, same as always. Careful Daphne, cold Daphne, difficult Daphne. The same notes, played in a different room 20 years later. But this time, I didn't shrink from them. "Norton and I are going to look at the yearbook table," I said, and walked away before Miriam had finished her smile. At the table near the far wall, our senior album lay open to the drama club page. Miriam smiled from center stage, photographed in the golden wash of a spotlight. I was in one corner, barely in frame, holding a stack of programs. Norton leaned in. Were you in theater? No. I wrote the program notes. Miriam said I had the face for backstage. A woman standing beside the table glanced over at us. Daphne, I remember those program notes. They were genuinely funny. It was such a small thing. Just a woman at a table, remembering something kind. But my smile, for the first time all evening, came without effort. Norton murmured close to my ear, "See, not everyone remembers her version." For almost an hour, I moved through the room instead of hiding from it. I spoke to old classmates, laughed at a story about our sophomore science teacher, and learned that the boy who'd sat behind me in AP English had become a librarian, which felt like exactly the right outcome. I began to remember that the room had held other people all along. People who hadn't been handed a script about me, people who remembered me as something other than Miriam's cautionary tale. Then Miriam tapped a champagne glass. "Everyone," she called from the small stage at the front of the gymnasium, her voice carrying easily over the music and conversation. My smile faded. Norton stepped closer. "Stay with me," he said quietly. Miriam lifted the microphone from its stand. "It's wonderful seeing so many familiar faces tonight. Old friends, old memories, old stories." She paused for effect, letting the room settle. "And speaking of stories, let's clear one up." Mark stepped forward from somewhere near the side of the stage. "Miriam, don't." She smiled wider. The smile that had always meant she had already decided. "Before everyone spends the evening admiring Daphne's handsome +1, you should probably know that he isn't her boyfriend." People began to turn toward me. "He isn't even her date," Miriam continued. "She paid him." The room gasped. Someone near the refreshment table whispered something I couldn't make out. Phones lifted. "She hired an actor," Miriam said, raising her glass, "because nobody would actually choose her." I looked at Mark. He stared at the floor. I whispered, "Say something," under my breath, knowing he couldn't hear me from across the room, knowing even as I said it that he wouldn't. He didn't. I turned toward the exit. Norton touched my elbow. "Your choice," he said softly. My throat burned. "I can't stand there while they laugh at me." "Then don't stand there," he said. "Walk." I looked at Miriam, standing under the gymnasium lights, with the expression of someone who had already written the ending, and was simply waiting for everyone else to arrive at it. She had worn that expression in the hallway of our high school, when she said the word, Miss Perfect. For the first time, she had worn it every time she found a new version of me to hand to someone else. I refused to let her have this one. I set my glass down on the nearest table. "I didn't come here to run," I said, and I walked toward the stage. Norton was already there. He had moved through the crowd with the quiet economy of someone who knows exactly where they are going, and he picked up the second microphone from its stand before Miriam could react. "Miriam is right about one thing," he said, and the room went still. "I am an actor. Daphne hired me through a professional talent agency as her +1 for this evening. Not as a boyfriend. Not as anything shameful. As support." Miriam rolled her eyes. "Support? How sweet. You already knew what I was," Miriam, Norton said. Her smile slipped, just barely. "I don't know you." "Yes, you do. Think, Norton," she said, and it was warning and recognition at the same time. Mark looked between them. "What? You know him?" Norton nodded. "We were signed with the same talent agency years ago." He looked toward me before continuing. "There is something Daphne does not know. When her booking appeared in the agency system, someone called pretending to be her assistant. They asked for my name, my rate, and the exact wording of the contract. The receptionist refused, but the caller already knew enough to guess. Every face in the room turned toward Miriam. Norton took out his phone. "My agent sent me the recording this afternoon." I recognized the voice, but I did not tell Daphne, because I wanted her choice about coming here to remain hers. Miriam did not discover the arrangement by accident. She went looking for something she could use. Miriam's face changed. "You cannot prove that was me." The call came from the event planning office listed on tonight's reunion program, he said. "The same office Beth gave you access to because you volunteered to contact vendors." Beth, the reunion chair, stood near the stage with her mouth slightly open. "You told me you needed the office to confirm the florist." Miriam shrugged too quickly. I was protecting everyone from being manipulated. No, Norton said. You found out a frightened woman had hired support, and instead of leaving her alone, you built a public humiliation around it. That is not protection. That is preparation. The word moved through me. Preparation. I had spent years wondering whether Miriam simply caused damage wherever she went, or whether she chose her targets carefully. Now I had my answer. Tonight had not been a cruel impulse. She had investigated me. She had planned the microphone, the champagne, glass announcement, even the pause where she expected people to laugh. And suddenly, the shame belonged exactly where it should have been all along. Miriam stepped forward. Don't? You were dropped, Norton said, after filing complaints every time someone else received a callback you wanted. That's a lie. No, he said. It's a pattern. You'd insult people. When they reacted, you'd report them. Then you'd cry first. So the story became about your feelings instead of what you'd done. A murmur moved through the crowd. Mark stared at Miriam. Is that true? You're seriously asking me that? She snapped. Norton turned to me and held out the microphone. Miriam laughed, though it had lost its ease. She won't say anything. She never does. I walked up the steps and took the microphone. I stood there for a moment and let the room be quiet. I had spent 20 years practicing other people's words, teaching them, analyzing them, explaining to students what authors meant when they chose one word over another, what they meant when they left things out. I had spent 20 years being more comfortable with other people's stories than my own. But I had stood at the front of a lecture hall hundreds of times, and I knew how to hold a room. I teach literature, I said. This week, I was teaching my students about unreliable narrators. Miriam scoffed quietly. Oh, please. An unreliable narrator, I continued, hides the truth, sometimes by lying outright, sometimes by leaving things out, sometimes by smiling while handing everyone a carefully twisted version of someone else. The room had gone entirely still. In high school, Miriam told people I thought I was better than them because I liked to read. She said I was cold because I was shy. She said I was stuck up because I didn't know how to fight back. Every quiet thing about me became evidence of something terrible. She handed that version of me to anyone who would take it. Miriam folded her arms. You were stuck up. No, I said. I was scared. For once, she had no quick answer. I watched her search for one and come up empty. So I kept going. Then Mark married me, I said, and Miriam handed him the same story with some new details. She told him I was judgmental, cold, impossible to love, the kind of woman who made a man feel small just by being in the room. Mark looked up from the floor. Daphne. Not here, less Mark. Here. His jaw tightened. This isn't fair. Fair, I said, and I almost laughed. You mean public? Because unfair was coming home to a husband who had already put me on trial based on someone else's testimony. Unfair was spending years defending myself against a version of me I didn't recognize. She lied because that's who she is. But you believed her because it was easier than asking me directly. He flinched. Miriam stepped forward. Don't blame me because your marriage failed. I turned to face her. I blamed myself for years, I said. That was your gift to me, and I carried it a very long way. But you don't get it back. I looked at Mark again, and what I felt wasn't anger anymore. It was something quieter and more final than anger. For years, I said, I thought Miriam stole you from me. Tonight, I understand it more clearly. She only opened a door. You walked through it. Miriam's eyes filled with angry tears. You're all actually listening to this, she said to the room. She paid a man to stand beside her. That's who she is. Yes, I said. I did. I hired Norton because I was afraid to walk into this room alone. Not because I needed a man to make me valuable. Because I needed one person beside me who hadn't already been told I was worthless. I had no idea he would know anything about you. Something shifted in the room. I could feel it. Not the gasp that had followed Miriam's announcement, but something steadier and more considered. A woman near the photo booth raised her hand, almost like we were back in a classroom. She did it to me too, she said. You told everyone I cheated on my scholarship essay. I didn't. I never cheated on anything. A man near the punch table added, You told people I only got my job because my uncle knew someone at the company. I interviewed 3 times for that position. I earned it. The room was very quiet. Mark was staring at Miriam with an expression I hadn't seen on him in a long time. The expression of someone recalculating something they thought they understood. How much of what you told me about Daphne was actually true? He asked her. Miriam grabbed his sleeve. You're choosing her now. After everything, I lifted the microphone one last time. No, I said. He doesn't get to choose me now. Baith, the reunion chair, stepped up onto the edge of the stage, holding the printed program for the evening. She had been in our graduating class, had organized this entire event, and she looked at Miriam with the expression of someone who had made a decision and was at peace with it. Miriam, she said, you're not giving the closing toast. Miriam froze. You can't do that? I just did? Beth looked at me. Daphne? Would you be willing? I looked out at the room. The room that had felt impossible to enter 3 hours ago. The room where I had spent years feeling like a footnote in someone else's story. Yes, I said. I would. I stood at the microphone for a moment and let myself actually look at the faces in front of me. Some of them I hadn't thought about in 20 years. Some of them had probably never thought about me at all. But they were all here, in this room with its reunion banner and its gym floor, and its badly calibrated sound system, and they were all listening. I raised my glass of untouched punch to everyone who spent years believing someone else's version of themselves. I said, may you finally hand the pen back to the person who actually lived the story. Beth started clapping. Someone else joined. Then another person. Then the sound filled the gymnasium the way sound does when people mean it, not just when they're following along. The applause did not feel like revenge. Revenge would have required enjoying the way Miriam's confidence collapsed. Instead, I felt grief. For the girl I had been, for the marriage Mark had surrendered, and even for the woman on stage who had spent 20 years needing other people to be smaller so she could recognize her own size. Then I noticed Claire standing near the back wall. She had driven 2 hours without telling me, just in case I needed her. She lifted her phone and showed me a message on the screen. You did not need rescuing. You needed a witness. I almost cried then, not when Miriam exposed the contract, not when Norton exposed her plan, at that small sentence from someone who understood the difference between standing beside me and speaking for me. Miriam grabbed her purse. Mark, she said. We're leaving. He didn't move. She stopped at the gymnasium door and looked back at him. Are you coming or not? Mark looked down at her hand, which was still gripping his sleeve. He looked at it for a moment as though he had just noticed it was there. Then he removed it gently and took a small step back. No, he said quietly. Miriam's face shifted through several expressions in quick succession. She looked at the room. No one moved toward her. No one offered her the audience she needed to rewrite what had just happened. After another moment, she left. A few minutes later, I walked outside. The air was cooler than I expected, and the parking lot was quieter than the gymnasium behind me. I had almost reached the cars when I heard Mark call my name. Daphne. Wait. I stopped. I didn't turn around right away. Before, I would have turned quickly, gratefully. Years of marriage had trained me to respond to the sound of his voice, before I'd had time to decide whether I wanted to. That night, I took my time. I stood in the parking lot and breathed the night air and let him wait for exactly as long as I needed. When I turned, he was standing a few feet away with his hands in his pockets, looking like a man who had just watched the floor shift beneath him and was still deciding where to put his weight. I'm sorry, he said. Yes, I said. You were, he swallowed. I forgot who you were. No, Mark. You let someone else tell you. His eyes shone in the parking lot light. Can we talk? Just 5 minutes. For years? I said. I begged for 5 honest minutes from you. I asked for the kind of conversation where you actually listened to my answer instead of deciding it in advance. I know, he said. No, I said. You don't. Because if you did, you would have given me those minutes before tonight. Before I had to defend my own character in front of people I barely knew. He was quiet for a moment. Then, is there any chance for us? I looked at him. There had been a time when that question, asked in that voice, would have undone me completely. I could still remember how it felt to love him, which was part of what made this so clear. There hasn't been an us for a long time, I said. There was you and there was me, and there was Miriam's voice in the space between us. That isn't something you fix with 5 minutes in a parking lot. Behind Mark, the gymnasium door opened and Norton stepped outside with his keys. He stopped when he saw the two of us, read the situation quickly, and stayed where he was. I looked at Norton, then at Mark, then at the gymnasium doors, still lit from inside. Yes, I said in answer to nothing Mark had asked. I'm ready to go. Mark stepped closer. Daphne. No, I said. You don't get my time now because the room finally stopped believing her. That isn't how it works. Norton had moved to the car and unlocked it, but he didn't open my door. He understood without being told that opening someone's door, for them, is a kindness, only when they haven't already proved they can open it themselves. I opened it myself. Before I got in, I turned to Mark one last time. He was still standing in the same spot, still watching me with that expression of someone trying to reverse a consequence that had already finished arriving. You should have asked me for the truth when it still mattered, I said. Then I got in the car. As Norton pulled out of the parking lot, I turned and looked back through the rear window at the gymnasium. The banner was still hung over the doors. The lights were still on. People were still moving inside, and I could see their silhouettes through the frosted glass, talking and laughing and carrying on with the ordinary business of a reunion. I had dreaded that room for 20 years. I had let Miriam hold it in my imagination as something that belonged to her. Her stage, her audience, her version of events. I had let her stand at the center of every memory I carried from those years, and decided that if she owned the past, she probably owned some piece of me along with it. Norton drove. The campus streetlights moved past the windows in steady rhythm. I hired someone to stand beside me for one night because I was afraid. That was true. But somewhere between the yearbook table and the microphone, between the gasp that followed Miriam's announcement and the applause that followed mine, I had stopped being afraid. Not because Norton was there, though having him there had made it possible to walk through the door. Not because the room had turned, though that had mattered more than I wanted to admit, but because I had stood at the front of that room and said the true thing in my own voice. And the world had not ended. I had spent 20 years teaching students that the narrator of a story shapes what the reader believes. I had spent those same 20 years allowing someone else to narrate me. I had hired someone to stand beside me for one evening, but I left that reunion with the woman I should have been standing beside all along. In the weeks afterward, I noticed the change in ordinary places. I stopped rewriting emails 3 times before sending them. I spoke at faculty meetings without beginning every disagreement with an apology. When a student stayed after class to admit that someone else's voice had become louder than her own, I did not offer a quotation from a famous novel. I told her the truth plainly: silence can keep you safe for a night, but eventually it charges rent. Then I watched her straighten slightly. The way I had beneath those gymnasium lights, I left with myself. And for the first time in a very long time, that felt like more than enough. If you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video with them. Thank you for being here. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.